people. They only make a proposal, just like us. The people decide. Well,
Town
if
solicitor
this
has
council
weighed
wants
in
to
on
sit
this
back,
and has
well,
said
the
that it is
solicitor
illegal.
apparently is telling the council what they want to hear and not telling the council what the law is or what the charter is. If you read the charter and the power duties of the charter, the council doesn't have the ability to do that. That's the people who have that ability through the FTR.
Treasurer
this-
just chimed in that
If this budget committee wants to go along with that, fine, that'll be a voted budget committee. But I want to put that money into operating because we are going to get some money from them. I don't see no reason to raise taxes on these people in this town. Then all because and then we're telling them
Joe,
we are going to get revenue.
Like I said,
Well, like
the
I said,
decision has
we do have the
been
ability to vote on
made.
that. By who? We didn't make that decision, and the voters didn't make that decision.
We're not going to carry on this discussion. I'm sorry.
Well, I said what I need to say. It's up to the rest of this budget committee to decide whether or not they're going to listen to that or they're going to do and put a proposal out for the people to vote on. Period.
All right, I'll ask a question. Does anybody other than Joe disagree with this decision? Show of hands. All those who disagree, raise your hand.
I have some reservations about it. I don't really like the town council strong-arming everything. And I do think that the people should be voting on these things.
But do you agree that the decision has been made and we can't change it?
I think that's probably true.
It is true. All right, listen. Everybody, we've seen this, we know what it says.
But it's going to be noted in the history books, what's going on.
Okay, it will be.
I'm not sure if I'm correct, but from what, I mean, and those of you that have been around longer than I have been, but what I had been told was that the revenue, and maybe Brendan knows a little bit more about this, that the revenue numbers that get put into the budget, actually the town council sets those revenue. I guess I know an alternate budget person can, put whatever revenue numbers they want into the budget, but I thought that it was in the charter that the revenue numbers come from the town council.
Chris, you want to weigh in on all this?
Treasurer.
Which part? So Joe's wrong. The powers and duties do grant the council the authority to create ordinances. And they did. And it's no different than the ordinance that Lincoln did to create theirs. It's for the better governance of the town and management of its affairs. And it is clearly in the charter under powers and duties of the town council. It is now a local law. It is what it is. You might not like it. You can do what you want with it, Joe, but I don't think it would be prudent for this board to usurp the authority of the council or the ordinance that was just passed. As it relates to the revenues, I believe Sherry's right. I do believe that I was just looking for that provision, that the revenues are generated, and you are working with the revenues that they did provide. Obviously, there's been some changes since they submitted their budget back in, was it February or March? And you've made those appropriate adjustments to those revenues. And the council had their meeting workshop on the budget. And I think they fully recognized the decisions that you made and they didn't have any qualm with it. So I think you move forward with those. I'm not sure what else you'd like me to weigh in on, but I think you're on the right track and you're trying to do what's right on behalf of the community.
Okay, that being said, everybody should have a copy of Tom's latest revenue estimates, his latest budget document, and his latest tax levy document. Okay, so relative to that, I believe I sent everybody a copy of what Denise Surratt sent me for August 5th, which has, it tells us what the carryovers for fiscal year 21 for paving, capital, elections, and reevaluation were. Everybody have that?
Yes.
And those were because of resolutions. So anything that was left over at the end of fiscal year 20, which still hasn't really been finalized yet. These were the carryovers. It also tells us what the unrestricted reserve balance is estimated to be and what would be available for us to use as revenue going forward.
So, Jay, you have Denise in the waiting room. You want me to bring her in?
Yeah, she would.
Hang on. Okay, and it's, I think Jerry Lockin's in the waiting room too. I don't know if you want to bring him in as well.
Well, we can bring him in, but he doesn't. We don't need to have him tell us anything
I
yet.
don't want them sitting out there if they're going to be participants in your meeting. So
Right.
So they're in and they're both in. And I'll keep an eye out to make sure if there are any others.
Denise, you there?
Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
I was having a little trouble.
So what you sent me on August 5th is pretty self-explanatory.
Yes.
It tells us what's going to go into paving, what's going to be going into capital, what's going into the elections account, what's going into the revaluation account, and what you think might be available for us to use as revenue from the reserve.
You notice it's in bold where it says best guess estimates.
That's why I was going to bring that up.
Okay.
This is your best guess estimate, keeping in mind that these numbers will change slightly, if at all.
Well, there could be the the 60-day tax revenue adjustment may affect that, and it will not be known until August 31st. And I have no history to base on because we've never collected taxes during a pandemic. So I don't know what the results are going to be by the end of August. So there could be a swing in the unrestricted general reserve balance. If you look at the fourth paragraph, first sentence. I know half of the entry is around 250,000. So that's going to be a negative adjustment to revenue. But then we could have a positive adjustment to revenue, but I just don't know what it is.
Okay.
Well, you just tell us what you think things will be the best you can. And in a lot of cases, I trust your estimates better than I do a lot of facts.
Well, this is the best guess estimate right here.
Okay. Does any of you guys have any questions for Denise on any of this?
I just wanted to point something out, Denise, in your, when you forwarded your letter, you also mentioned in your email that you had an added $10,000 for the prorated property tax.
I didn't know if that was a change that the tax assessor had sent in an email, and I didn't know if that had been captured in your documents yet.
I think I already captured that.
It very well might have.
Okay. So we have $50,000 in that.
So hang on.
It's 40,000 right now on the document you sent around. Oh wait, nope. Sorry, wrong one. Too many of these.
I know.
Yeah, last.
Yes, it's in there.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. At the start of the year, it was $40,000. Now it's 50.
Yes, he said
Correct.
add. Okay.
Anybody else have any questions?
I do.
Yes, Joe.
Not sure if Denise knows, but do we know where we're at on the power plant assessment?
I do not know. You'd have really get a better answer from
Yeah,
Dave Robert.
Yeah, I
Yes.
realize it's not on though, so.
It doesn't have an effect on this anyhow.
I've talked to Dave a couple of times and he hasn't mentioned anything about that, but then again, I haven't asked him anything about it specifically either.
So that will affect the taxes that go out for 2022.
Right.
All right. All right. Gotcha.
Yeah, none of the reevaluation that's going now is going to do us any good.
So they're in the final year of the tax agreement then.
I believe
Yes.
so.
Okay, I
Excellent.
thought it didn't. Okay. Yeah, all right.
So the only, there's one other, and I don't know if it's in the capital item, Denise, would be that $50,000 for the grant for the,
I reserved that from 20, and so you shouldn't, unless you're putting in, you're appropriating another 50,000.
no, that's what I want to make sure. And I also wanted to make sure it wasn't in the fund balance.
Right, nope, it's not.
Okay, and
Took it
I
out.
will get the letter on that as well, too, that you need a letter for that, I know.
Yep, no, I took it out.
So
Okay.
we don't need to worry about it at all.
No.
Okay, good. One last thing. Any other questions for Denise on revenue? I have one question. Denise, I thought I saw this somewhere in print and I just can't find it. And I thought it came from you, but I saw something to the effect that other communities were reducing their revenue estimates by as much as 40%. Did you tell
Yes.
me that, or is it in print somewhere?
I think that was in the email that I sent to you.
That's where I can't find it. That's where I thought it was. But
Just in conversations that I've been having in my weekly conference calls, this subject has come up about what the losses in revenue are for
That was
all
on
of
the
the
news today
communities.
too.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on what the community gets from the state. So while we rely heavily on our state aid, comparatively to the bigger communities, they get so much more. They get the in lieu of taxes payment, they get distressed communities payments depending on where they are. I mean, you can see that all on the municipal website, the Department of Municipal Finance, if you were interested to see what other communities get from the state. So everybody was kind of, had all different philosophies about how they were scaling back their revenue.
Plus the governor just went back on the COVID phases, so they're dropping which is going to again hurt the taxes from beer and beverage and things like that, hotels.
Yeah, so it's really everybody's guess. We have no hard numbers to rely on.
okay. Any other questions for Denise? Okay, thanks, Denise. Appreciate it.
There was one thing that I just wanted to point out as I was going through the budget. On page 17, summer recreation, you have a budget for fiscal year 21. Well, right now is when we would be spending that money and there is no recreation. So,
Well,
So Denise,
But
is
But
that,
Denise, do you anticipate that it won't be in 2021?
we are in 21. That's this, right. By 6:30, there's usually no park program. So the park program has been eliminated, which would be the directors and the counselors. The recreation director is still there.
okay, that's what I was gonna,
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying? It runs
Yeah,
from
so we're going to budget for that next year when we meet
Right.
in January. That's when we would be putting that budget in for that
Right.
year. Okay,
right.
I
So
got
the
you.
park program starts July 1. We're not
So-
having a park program.
So we could take that whole section out and save it.
no, you need
everything
the
but the-
director.
Everything
the
but
di-
the director.
Right.
Okay,
so we're
thank you.
talking about directors
Oh,
and
you-
counselors,
well, you wanna leave the-
transportation.
You want to leave the winter recreation in.
And the supplies.
You could take out the directors and the counselors.
What is the winter recreation used for?
Trunk or treat, the
Well,
holiday
so
programs.
So let me ask this. Roger Williams has already said that they're going to be, Halloween's probably not going to happen.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
some of the
Mhm.
Christmas events are already being taken
Oh,
off
you're
the
right.
board. Salem's taking their things off the board. Like, why would we budget that? Because you're not going to be able to gather people the way that they have for the tree lighting and the trunk or treat in the
Mhm.
past anyway. So we might want to look at removing that because those events will probably be canceled.
You're right about that. As a matter of fact, and I don't have the number offhand, but if some of you remember a couple of years ago, Councilor LeBeau donated some money for winter recreation. That's being held in a reserve. It has not all been spent. So if in fact they did spend some money on some kind of a winter event, there's sufficient funds there to cover it.
So
So that
we're
can,
talking about directors and counselors, transportation, and winter recreation.
Yes.
And online registration, or not online, supplies and the director would remain.
Yes.
All right.
So that's about
something
10 grand.
That's something for us to talk about.
That was my only observation.
Thank
so
you.
if someone donates something, Denise, into a fund like that, then that gets held year to year.
Well,
Right.
that was the intent at the time. It's not like we get donations all the time.
Right.
But, sometimes we'll get a $50 donation to a cemetery to help maintain or mow the lawn. So that will get spent immediately. But, something like the winter recreation where it was a significant amount, and it wasn't all spent, they had asked that it be held over.
Okay. That's good to know.
Okay, it's good to know. Anything
Okay.
else?
Nope, that's it.
Enjoy your evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Good night.
Denise.
Good night, thank you.
Thanks, Denise.
Thanks.
Thank
See ya.
you.
Okay, so as long as we're on this, Nancy Mello sent me an email, and I think I forwarded it to everybody. She realizes we've doubled the FDR since. She'll have to do 2 FDRs and going forward. She thinks she will need to add another 10,000 to that amount in order to hold the FDR in September. I cannot send out all mail ballots because we would need $60,000 or $70,000 or more for postage and setting up ballot envelopes. Even if the resolution passes, she has a resolution she wants to add to this. Even if the resolution passes allowing the shortfall to go to the election count, it is definite that I will need more than the 11,500 budgeted, but we did double that. But I guess she needs another 10,000 on top of that. Additionally, she says, I only have $38,000 for the primary and presidential elections. With the added expenses for protection and distancing, cleaning, etc., she will need more than the additional 50,000 proposed, and she would like to raise that amount to $65,000. All I'm going to say about this is we all know Nancy pretty well, and she usually knows what she's doing. And if she tells me that she needs to add money to these accounts, I believe her.
The other thing about making sure our elections are intact is that the point of democracy that's so important is that we're all able to participate. And we might not all agree, Joe, we don't always agree, you and me, but protecting the right that all of us are represented is essential.
And I believe what she wants to do here is just make sure that she has enough monies in these accounts to do just that, keeping in mind that if events turn out differently, then the money's still there, you know, doesn't disappear. So just put that in the back of your heads when we're talking about the budget itself.
Jay,
Yeah, Joe,
I think at minimum, she's gonna receive a lot of requests for mail-in ballots. So
probably.
it's gonna be, I'm sure, quite a few requests for that.
More than normal. Okay, so we have already gone over the revenue estimates once, but let's just go over them one more time quick. A couple of things have come up. The first one you'll notice on the red page 1 of it, when you get down to 4999, which is miscellaneous revenue clerk, you may have noticed that it jumped from $500 to $50,000. The reason for that is Tiverton has a vicious dog account. Apparently we've had it for years. Nothing gets done with it. There's $49,500 in it. Nancy brought that to everybody's attention, and we can inject that into the revenue. That account can go away. Am I wrong in that, Chris?
No, you're not. You're absolutely right with that. I would just put an asterisk next to it for your next year's, or who's ever doing the budget next year, that you recognize that that's a one-time revenue.
Which account number did you say that was?
The
4999 miscellaneous revenue clerk. About 2/3 of the way down the page.
It's just above the total of 430,600.
Kind of in the middle of the page. Maybe.
So it's a one-time deal. It'll clean out that account. It'll be gone forever, but it helps us now. Everybody got that? Understand it? The second page, I don't think there's anything different there. Investment income, it went down to 40,000. These things are highlighted in yellow. So basically from the initial revenue estimates for this year, not what was budgeted for fiscal year 20, but remember several months ago, we got the initial fiscal year 21 revenue estimates from the treasurer. And that estimate was $160,000, is now 40. So that's gone down by 75%. Tax interest, it's gone down by about 10%. Private detail fire, it's down 34%. And these, if you'll remember, these are things that we did. We made these revenue estimates based on what we know, what we think, experience of people in our body, for instance. Mike Dakotas.
Thank you. Jay, can I ask Mr. Cotta a question, possible?
Absolutely.
Hi, Chris.
Hi.
So I know that at some point the council had a potential issue with the rescue third-party billing. Was that all sewn up, and is that pretty accurate, that 650,000 still?
I'm gonna say it's not sewn up, and we don't have a real we have, they're still doing catch up. Let me put it that way. They didn't get the amount out until mid-May. And they did jack up the fees quite a bit, but the fees, even though they got jacked up, don't necessarily, I had a meeting with this about 2 weeks ago, don't necessarily correlate more revenue. Because as we all know, you get your payment services from your insurer, they're only going to pay X anyhow.
Right.
So whether we were charging for, let's say, ALS 1, if it was $800 before and we collected $450, and now we're charging $2,800, we're still collecting $450. We didn't get to collect more money because we raised the fees. The insurance companies are pretty savvy about that. So we're still working our way through that, but I think it's a fairly decent number because we did bring in, I think it was about 500 by the end of the fiscal year, and we're still doing some catch up on. So the 650 should be a fairly decent number.
All right, I just want to make sure.
I don't think it's over, but it's whether or not we go through another spell of like from March, end of March through early June. There was very, very little traffic accidents, you know, as far as collections and those, you know, billables that went out. So if we have another period of that, we might have some shortcomings there, but we're going to keep an eye on it. We do think it's an attainable number, though.
All right, I just want to make sure that as a budget committee, we're not overreaching on that one. So if you're confident, then it's good enough for me. Thank you.
Pretty confident that it'll come in because it's also, we're also going to have some catch up from last year's as well. So
okay,
it's.
How far back can we go?
To track that as well.
How far back can we go, Chris?
They were pretty delinquent before we started sending things out in May. They were behind almost 10 months. They did quite a bit to get them out, and there was a pretty good catch up, but there's still some delinquents on that. And they started with the new billings that went out from May, and they're pretty much on target. So we do think it's a fairly.
So we've collected back where we had left off?
We're still short from what we originally billed out. We collected about 80% of it. So at least round figures, I think we're about 80%. So I think we were up around 600, what we were projecting for last year as well. And we didn't collect quite that.
Well, so they weren't collecting at all, so.
No, they weren't, which was a problem because
right.
I don't want to get into the whole issue, but.
Right, we know.
We did get it resolved and it did get out there and we did a pretty good job of collecting about 80% of it. And there was some dispute about some of the bills that did go out that had to be redone. So, but like I said, I don't think simply because we raised the fees that's going to generate more money. I think it's just the volume is going to get back to where it was before, and we should be on target to get the 650.
Yeah, I don't remember which is which, but I seem to remember being told by the fire department that, you know, we collect from two people basically, Medicaid or Medicare and private insurance. And one of them you can go back, I believe it's 18 months, and the other one can go back a year. So they were going to go back after the ones that expired soonest first.
They did.
Yeah. So, but they've done a pretty darn good job of getting us back where we belong.
So yeah, I think we should be okay with that.
Okay. So where were we? Okay, on the second page, police and fire details were both like 33%. We estimated they would be like 33% less. Park programs, we took that out entirely because they aren't happening, so there'll be no revenue. Hotel tax, 75% down, meals and beverage, 75%. And when you take out the casino revenue and the sports betting, when it's all said and done, we've lost 75% of our revenue. Just to put everything in perspective. Originally, the original revenue estimate for fiscal year 21 was almost $17 million, 16,934,503. And the document you're looking at right now makes it, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, 14,107,997, a difference of $2.8 million and change.
So we're at 75%, not cut by 75%.
No, we've lost 75%.
No, if we'd lost 75%, then we would only have like.
Oh, I'm looking at I'm sorry. We lost 75%. If you look at miscellaneous, yeah. including the gaming and hotels and all that.
Just that one category.
Yeah,
Okay, just that category. Okay,
I'm
thank you.
sorry.
Yeah, the bottom line, I calculated on the bottom right box there, it's 83% of what we originally had
Right.
submitted.
And we had injected 1.2 million from the general fund.
1.2.
Yeah, that's that green line there.
Now, in Denise's letter, she was a little more optimistic as to what the maximum of that could be. She estimated a maximum of 1.64 million to 1.89.
No, yeah, okay.
Right.
A maximum of 1.89.
Yeah, right.
Minimum of 1.640.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that means.
Well, keep in mind, I don't think any of us want to take the unrestricted reserve to zero. That would be kind of a fool's errand if you ask me. So what Denise told us is just what, in her opinion, is liable to be there and we could use if we chose.
Jay,
Yes, Jen.
what if we bumped that from the 1.2 to 1.5?
Well, before we do that, I would make a suggestion. We go over the budget itself. And then the last thing we do is look at the tax levy and see what where we're looking at right now tells us. And then if we're over the 4%, we know we got to do something. If we're too close to the 4%, we know we have to do something. And that will determine how much more how much we have to inject in to get to where we want to be. How's that?
Okay.
Let the budget lead the levy, not the other way around.
So hold on, just to understand better, from Denise's information.
Yep.
Can't we add in paving, that there's 525 left of paving, that there's 500,000 left in capital?
Those are all restricted accounts, keep in mind. So they can't become revenue.
Okay, but then we can take them out of the budget.
Jay, again, they were.
Hang on a minute, Joe. Can we, Denise, or Jen, when we get into the budget itself, can we get back to that? Because it'll become more clear. Oh,
I just think what she did was rationalize that range of money, 1.64 to 1.89. I think she enumerated all the things that went into that for the general fund balance. I think that's what she was up to.
Yeah, we had a general fund that had X amount of money in it. And then we have resolutions that say some of that has to be diverted to restricted accounts. So after that was all said and done, we are left, in her estimation, with somewhere between 1.64 and $1.89 million.
Of which you've already allocated 1.2.
Yes. So then some portion of that we can use as revenue. We just don't know how much yet. So, budget.
Jay, can a couple of questions, and maybe we'll get to these in order, but has there been any update on the recycling center as to whether that's something that we must do in this FY21? Okay,
I can answer that. Let's look at the budget and I'll answer that right away.
Okay, and because similarly,
so page one of the budget, it's page 2 at the bottom, debt service and all that, untouchable. The second page, equipment replacement, capital improvement, all under municipal capital, restricted. You notice everything's yellow except for the $600,000 for the recycling center. Okay. So here's a rationale. Here's an idea that came up, and I'll explain the rationale. And Chris, if I'm wrong, slap me. We take the $600,000 away from the recycling center. We don't fund it. All right. We hope that the DEM will grant us an accommodation where we can continue to use the landfill and keep the recycling center where it currently is. At the same time, to show that we're serious about, we understand we still got to do this thing, we continue with the infrastructure, which is the road and any water and electrical service, and use the industrial park infrastructure fund to pay for that, which was always the intention. Now, as Brendan mentioned, out of the paving account and out of the capital account, out of the capital account, $500,000 went into capital. So it's sitting there in a restricted account. But there's also a resolution that says it can be used for things within capital, which includes the recycling center. So if the DEM came back and said, pack sand, you've got to do it, we still have the money to do it. But it's not budgeted. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So using that rationale, we don't budget the money for the recycling center, but the money is there if we had to do it and we didn't have a better use for it.
So that would be a town council decision to not spend any capital, the $500,000 that's in the reserve account, until we knew where things came out with DEM.
Yes, and it's always their decision in a way, because once the money is in the budget, the town council has and does move money around within accounts. But they have to approve it. But they can also recommend it. Normally it's the department head says, I want to move money from point A to point B. He has to get it approved, and they say, okay, go ahead and do it. But in this case, the town council could say, we want to move money from here to here and approve it and do it. Yes, Joe.
Well, first, let me say that you keep saying 4%, like it's agreed that we want to have a 4% increase in the next year.
That's a target.
Well, I think a target should be 2%.
Well,
Secondly,
lots of luck.
there's over $9 million in the landfill account,
Which has to be used for the landfill.
which has to be used for landfill closure. Yes. Well, you know what? Moving the transfer station is part of landfill closure. And with a vote of listen, okay, listen, okay, the town council tomorrow could take money out of that account and use that to build the transfer station. And if anybody else tells you different, they're lying, because they used it to drill a well up there. They've used it for engineering. So don't tell me it can't be used. I was lied to for years about that. And I found out that with a council vote, they can use money. It is restricted for use for the landfill closure. And that would be part of the landfill closure, because you have to move the recycle center out of the landfill. So stop saying that you can't use it. The money that you're talking about now could be used to lower the tax rate. You're not going to lie to the public anymore. They lied to me on the council for 2 years about that, and I had to talk to several different lawyers to find out and get an interpretation. And then I found out that the town lawyer lied to me, and I'll say it to his damn face. I'm tired of it.
Chris, can you speak to that point?
You can't take the landfill closure account and build a recycling center with it. It is not closing the landfill. It has nothing to do with it.
Okay, so does everybody understand the rationale behind zeroing out the recycling center item? Does anybody other than Joe have a problem with that?
I have a question, comment that I think it's really good that we're not funding it. I just think the DEM is going to look at that and say, I don't think they don't have the money. And I think, but on the same line of thought, I don't know that it's so great to continue the road into the industrial park in a year like this, when people who are in town, the ones who lost their jobs are the ones who are, in restaurants and waiting tables and jobs like that they don't have any extra money, and other people too. That's just one example. And you're going to build a road.
No, that wasn't the point.
I'm not finished. I'm not finished.
Money's there.
Okay, let Ruth finish.
Please, Jen, don't interrupt. You can talk after me. I'm just saying it looks really bad. And to say, oh, we have to build a road in there. And then the fact is, it looks like from what I've been hearing that's not the best location anyway. And no one ever said that when they were discussing it in the beginning. And I, as a resident, even, I'm very upset because when I look at the DPW site, it looks perfect for that. You make a circle, you drive in, you do what you need to do, and you leave. It's very convenient. I don't have to go all through it's just, there's a lot of problems with this that I see. And, I just want to mention one other thing that's off topic a little bit, Jay, but I want everyone to keep in mind that the people who made the deal with the casino deal.
Okay, Ruth, look, no, please do not go off topic here.
They did not take into account closed.
We'll come to that.
Okay, and
not
that's
now,
town council.
please.
So just be careful.
All right, listen.
A lot of problems came up from that.
As far as the location, the design and all that of this recycling center, it's done. We don't do it. We can't change it. We won't. As far as building a road, the money that will be used will come out of a restricted account for specifically that purpose. It cannot be used for anything else. So it has nothing to do with people being out of work. All right, let's go on to the next.
We don't have to do it this year. We do not have to. That's
What does
absolutely.
it matter when we do it? We still got to do it. We need to get it going.
I think. that
Okay, so we
something is
zeroed out,
to help
if
the
we
people.
zero out all capital,
But Jen had something. I don't know.
with, I'm sorry, who?
Jen, do you still want to comment on that, or?
My point was that Jay already covered it, and your point was moot.
Okay, that leaves us then, the only capital we will have left will be the 229,146 for recurring major timed finance payments. They're contractual, they don't go away, we have to do them.
Jay, I just need to respond to Jen. My point is bad planning causes problems, and that's what we're dealing with on this committee right now. Past bad planning. Just keep that in mind. Okay, go ahead, Jay. I'm sorry.
Policy, Ruth. We're just
Okay, guys.
Bad planning.
Oh, Lord.
And Jocelyn,
Can I ask a section? After we talk about a section, can we vote on that section? So we can start to move on voting?
we can, because somebody, yeah, sure. Would everybody like to do that?
Yeah, I think.
Well, wait a minute now.
I mean,
wait a
we can
minute.
always get to the end and have to
We
go
have
back.
one problem here. I didn't have any voting included in the agenda for tonight.
Okay.
Monday we will. So we can get all the, this out of the way tonight. And then we can just breeze through this thing as far as voting on Monday. How's that?
Okay, that's fine. Thanks, Jay.
So if we remove all those things, we will have saved $1,109,000 in capital. Includes municipal capital, the school capital, all of it. That brings us to the next page. If you go to town council, the contingency fund.
Jay, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I ask a question? Is Jerry still on the phone? Like, can we have Jerry bring whatever he needs to bring so he doesn't have to sit through this whole conversation and have, spend his night?
Jerry, you there?
I am. I would actually.
It doesn't really matter how we go through this, as long as we do it.
Thank you.
I'd actually appreciate that because I'm trying to drive around, find a strong signal. I'm on a hot spot. So,
How about the library?
Well, I'm in Maine.
Oh, you're in Maine.
Yeah.
It's a long commute, Jerry.
Yeah, well,
You're in the COVID hotspot too.
yeah, it's a challenge, but one I've managed to get to or meet. So, yeah, I defer to you guys, but I'd love to be able to do what I can do for you tonight at your discretion.
Well, if we're looking at the school request, the maintenance of effort was $31,890,000.
Yep.
Amy Roderick tells me that needs to be increased by 236,519 because that is what we're getting from the state this year. And that's already been reduced a couple of times.
Say that again, Jay.
We need to increase the maintenance of effort number by 236,519 to reflect the additional revenue from the state for this year.
I'm sorry, Jay, say that one more time because I'm just trying to get the number.
Add 236,519 to the maintenance of effort,
Which brings us to 32126
519.
519.
And the
Thank
reason
you.
for that is that's what we're getting from the state over and above what we got last year.
Is the 236,000 that's coming in, is that reflected in the revenue?
No, because it all counts together, doesn't it? Like the state aid and the municipal.
Well, what I did was I took, if you look at the red sheet and you're looking at budgeted fiscal year 20, and we got 7,482,838. Well, actually, hang on a minute. I've got a different.
No, we got 7,238,248.
Actually, what's that, Sherry?
We got 7,238,248.
Yeah, that's right, because they shorted us last year too. And we had to make up the difference from the municipal side, right, Chris?
It is.
Well, the thing I have here from the school department, and Jerry, you can weigh in on this. When they take the maintenance of effort from last year, add in the state increase, they come up with that number, 32126,519.
I'm sorry, repeat that. Say that again.
Amy Roderick.
Yep.
Is telling me that the new maintenance of effort, the new number for this year.
Yep.
With the maintenance of effort and the additional money that we've got from the state comes to a total of 32126,519.
So yeah, so if that is if you were going to level fund from last year, which
That's
is
if we're going to level
I guess,
fund.
then you have to essentially give, one penny, $1, one egg more than the increase in state aid, or you will be reducing the local levy at you will be reducing the local levy at the expense of state aid. So what you can't do is cut the local levy because you got an increase in state aid, and
right.
That's so that is correct. If that's what your choice is to do level funding from the local levy.
Okay.
About 0.7% of an increase of about, somewhere between 0.6 and 0.7%, I think.
0.75 if I got it right.
Okay.
Jerry, can you tell us what percentage of the budget is affected by the new bus contract?
So
$250,000 increase.
Yeah. We essentially got, so the easy way to think about this is that 1% of our budget is $320,000. So yeah, so if we have a $750,000 increase, it's a roughly, 2.4% or something in that neighborhood increase on top, in our costs, in our overall budgetary costs. It was, a significant, something like 10% increase in their costs, which was, it's probably not worthwhile discussing all of the ins and outs of that contract, but it was a single bid, single vendor situation for a service that we are required to provide. And so we essentially got gouged. You may sort of feel like there's some collusion there. We kind of do, but there isn't really that much we can do about it, at least in the short term.
So,
Yep.
so the amount that's in addition to what was billed last year is how much? Is it 250,000 more than last year?
I don't have that exact number right in front of me. I believe it's about 750,000 more.
750,000 more?
Yeah, but I'd have to get back to you on that number.
Okay, that's really important. Because then we're not even level funding the schools if the bus costs that much.
Yeah, so, this is, if maybe the most helpful thing I can do is kind of tell you where we are right now with our budget. And the biggest point, I guess, is that we still have a lot of unknowns. The biggest unknowns are, though we do think we have some projection of what state aid is, we don't have any idea if there will be additional funds through Congress that are state pass-throughs. Some initial funding, they basically just reduced our state aid by that amount, so we didn't really have a net increase in fund. There is some money that will be eligible for costs that are associated with PPE and cleaning and social distancing and other issues around the COVID pandemic. However, that money still needs to be applied for, and the application itself is not yet available for RIDE, and the deadline is August 31st. Now, we have every expectation that once that application is available, we'll execute it accurately and appropriately, and we will get that money. And it's, $200,000 or more, a little bit more. But that's specifically for COVID related expenses. So we don't know what, the final number of aid will be from the state. That's one variable. The second is our busing costs did go up substantially. That's another variable. The third is that we yet do not have notification from RIDE which of the 3 plans we will need to execute in September. So if you've been reading the news, we were required to submit 3 different plans. One that was full distance learning, one that was a hybrid of distance learning and being in session, and then one that was being full in session. We actually got complimented by the governor in her press conference yesterday, the day before yesterday. One of 3 towns that she called out as having made a superior job of it. But we don't know still which one of those will be the plan we are instructed to execute by RIDE. And so we don't know what costs will be there from that. We have already cut $1.4 million from our original proposal to the budget committee in March, when I think you allocated a 2% increase to the schools. So we had to make an additional $1.4 million from sort of where we were going into the initial discussion in the winter and early spring. And so, yes, if we go with maintenance of effort from the local levy plus whatever additional revenue we get from the state, plus, you know, a penny, a dime, a dollar, a quarter, whatever you want to call it. It will essentially mean eliminating positions in the teaching staff. There isn't really any way around that.
Jerry, can you also?
Wait, I'm sorry, Jen. Sherry and I have both had our hands up.
Yeah, Jen Johnson.
Oh, sorry. I think Sherry was before me, actually.
Okay, Sherry.
Thank you, Jennifer. Dr. Larkin, I have a couple questions. First is, are the ESSER funds the, can you explain to me what the ESSER funds are?
I guess you'd have to tell me what you're referring to when you mean the ESSER funds.
Are you talking about the student resource officer, Sherry?
No, I had sent and asked Denise Surratt to send me information regarding those numbers for the school, and what she had said, and this is why a couple things are not making sense to me. Let me start back at the beginning. The first thing is you said that for means of effort, we needed to add 236,519, I thought we had received more state aid. So I'm not sure why the means of effort why you're saying that has to be added in. And I guess maybe give me an explanation as to what's causing that large addition to have to be added in. And then the other concern that I had was the treasurer said that there is $194,599 in ESSER funds, which have not been received yet, but the application for the funds are in progress. But that number, the 194, is actually part of that 238, 248 number I gave you. So 194,599 is included in that 7 million number. So I don't know. I'd like to know if those ESSER funds is something that's guaranteed that's going to come in, or whether
Jerry,
or not.
But those ESSER funds are the funds that the state took at the end of the year and swapped with federal money.
Yeah. Okay. Now so that is okay. Yeah, that is the number. Basically, that was money that the state received, rather than have that as a, unrestricted pass through. What they did was, because all the money, this must have been from the CARES Act or the PPP.
It was.
That money, rather than say, here, Tiverton, here's another $194,000 for you, they basically said, we are applying that to your state aid fiscal year 2020, i.e. the fiscal year that ended, 5 weeks ago. And that's what they used to plug the, whatever it was, $280 million state shortfall. So while those, Denise is the receiver and the dispenser of funds. So she may have been trying to communicate something to you that only she can really, I guess, gloss further. But that money was not, new revenue for this district. If in fact that's what she's referring to, which I think is what it is, now that Chris has clarified that for me.
So
yeah, I think she wanted to make sure that I knew that we had not received those funds.
Okay, so yes, that's right. We didn't receive it.
And then to compound it more, the state, I think at the statewide, it was like 42 million or something of those funds. They swapped it out and they promised like 50 million for COVID-related school opening issues as an additional source of revenue come NFY 2021, if I remember right.
Right, but that's the money that we still, there is money that we think is allocated to us. We still have to go through the application process. Our expectation is that we would execute the application process, get the money, blah, 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 blah. It is for the additional costs associated with COVID. That has nothing really to do with maintaining our curriculum, sort of, salary, stuff like that. Keep in mind as well, our contractual obligations for our increases in pay are about $1 million for FY 2021. 2021.
Jerry, I had two questions. The first one was part of the busing. When I watched the presentation, and I know that we're contractually obligated or law obligated to provide busing to certain private schools. But my question being, I think that was about $77,000 of that contract was to go to St. Phil's and to go to All Saints. How is that? So when we watch for busing for our public school students, it's been explained to us that we can only put 23 children on a bus and that we can only have 14 buses, and that as parents, in order to go back, we need to get to those numbers by carpooling or otherwise in order to even go back in any kind of in-person phase. So has there been any conversation? How does that work for those children? Are there more than 23 children on those buses, or is there any leniency with the state or anything for that in this environment to kind of eliminate that almost $80,000 cost?
That's a good question. Insofar as I know, the answer is no. Right now, we are statutorily required to provide that transportation. So we would presumably have to observe the same sort of distancing requirements for those children as we would for our own, for the children in the public schools. Presumably that is where some of that, but it's about $230,000. Where some of that $230,000 would go would be to be able to maintain the appropriate distance. The other thing is we don't know, and again, it's I wish it wasn't so amorphous, but it is. We don't know what the response ultimately will be from parents and teachers once we get a notification from RIDE. The notification is supposed to come between August 10th and August 17th. And you may say to yourself, as I say to myself, boy, that's not a lot of time between until August 31st when the state calendar is supposed to start, which is why in my mind, but perhaps not in, the states, that date isn't written in stone because, as we all know, a lot can happen. And the things that are happening, at least epidemiologically in Rhode Island, are not in our favor right now. But once they make that pronouncement to us, you're going with hybrid, full in session, full distance learning, then we don't really know what the response will be from our parents and from our teachers, some of whom, are likely to have very valid reasons for saying, I cannot come back into school where my exposure is to, 15 kids a day, 30 kids a day, 140 kids a day if you're a high school teacher. I think the one thing I can say with confidence is that we're not going full session, in full session. That's speculative, but I guess I am confident in the speculation. So that's a long answer, but the answer is one of the worst budgetary unknowns about the learning plan, whatever one it is what that does to the busing.
So, Jerry, is the final decision also the schools, even though the RIDE comes up with the determination on August 17th? Is it still left to the district to determine?
That might be a game of chicken, or it might be a collaboration. We don't know. Okay. Insofar as I know right now, it is the state will tell us what they think is the most appropriate plan that we have proposed, presumably with some feedback from them. And my guess is that there will be some ability to discuss details of that with RIDE once they've made a pronouncement. More to the point is, I think, what will happen on the ground with community transmission in Rhode Island and Massachusetts over the next 3 weeks that will make, if they come back and say, you guys should go hybrid, which in some regards is, if the world were changing, but we're changing in a stable way, if that's not a misnomer, then a hybrid would make sense because you could move easily to either full session, not easily, but you could move to full session, or you can imagine moving from full session to full session or to distance learning relatively quickly from either, from that vantage point. But I don't know that community transmission won't be escalating in such a fashion at the end of this month that everyone will be in distance learning. That's kind of my guess is what will happen.
Jerry, I had one other question as far as budgeting goes and salaries and things, and
Sure.
it kind of tied into the distance learning and if we level fund and you have to make additional cuts, where at this point, if any additional cuts are made, it's obviously going to be salaries and things that's kind of where you're at, and that's been explained. Would that impact being able to go back into an in-person or even a hybrid, given the reduced class sizes, the different setups of classrooms and having to be less students and things like that? Would that actually have an impact on whether we could go back or not?
Yes. Although I don't think that, well, let me answer the question that I think you're questioning is, which is if our budgeting was such that we said actually distance learning is cheaper than in-session learning, so we're going to go to distance learning. We can't make that the sole.
No, that's not what I was trying to think. I was trying to say, I think in another way to say it is, will you have enough staff to go back into in-person with the restrictions the way that they are, with less students in class? If you had to reduce your staff,
right? Okay, no, I get it. All right. So let me. Okay, so I think your question is, if we were going to go back into full session, and our budget was, level funded, for want of a better term, would we still have sufficient teaching staff to meet the requirements of IEPs, teacher to student ratio, contractual obligations under the collective bargaining agreement with teachers? I can't say I know for sure. I believe the answer is yes, but we would be cutting it so close. It would be very creative, and it's gonna, cut into things that we clearly do not want to cut into. The district has underperformed, and the way you get it to perform better is to improve the teaching. And one of the ways you improve teaching is you educate teachers, you engage students, you engage families, but you also allocate teaching resources, personnel, to areas where there are deficiencies. So, we will always make it work one way or another, because we will have to, because we're required to, by not just law, but by the actual Constitution. But it's certainly not going to be easy. And I can't tell you that, don't worry, we got this, because it's gonna threaten some of the progress we made over the last 2 years. Not threaten it, or probably decimate it. So.
Jay, Jen, and I have questions. Jay?
Yes, Ruth.
Jen, you go first. You want to go first? You were first.
Thank you, Ruth. Jerry, haven't there been several reports indicating that students have really fallen behind because of the stay-at-home learning, and that they've fallen like half a year to a year behind?
I think that when you look at national or even regional and state numbers, that's absolutely true. We don't have the granular information that you can say that's true of Tiverton.
Mm-hmm.
What I can say of Tiverton is that Dr. Sanchioni was practically clairvoyant in instituting the one-to-one program in January. We turned much faster than any other district in Rhode Island, and Rhode Island turned much faster than any other state, particularly in the Northeast, including Massachusetts. So it's a lot of that information you see coming out of Massachusetts where, there were kids who were just not engaged. By the end of the school year, they still didn't have 100% engagement. We were very aggressive, not just in making sure kids were engaged, but making sure that there was a device in the home for homes where they weren't able to, they didn't have the resources to have a device. Internet connectivity, we worked with providers to make sure that happened. We maintained the free and reduced lunch program. We should be very proud of what we did.
Yeah,
we should be very proud of. So, but the answer to, is there a cost to distance learning? The answer is absolutely yes. Probably the most significant and measurable cost is in K through 4.
Which are the most important years?
They certainly are really critical.
So they read to learn.
Yeah. I think this, it's hard to say, one year is more important than the next. What I think is critical in K through 4 is the socialization aspect of learning how to be in school, of learning how to be in a peer group, of, learning the routines of, education so that you are successful later on as well. So, and that is hard to do distance learning, absolutely.
Okay.
Quick
Yes,
question.
Ruth.
Jerry, I thought there were 2 bus companies. Can you just confirm or let me know the truth of that?
There are 2, and they apparently talk to each other quite a bit. We got 1 bid.
I see. Okay. And then I just wanted to mention, I know, Jerry, I'm sure you're aware of this, but like I happened to meet and talk to a teacher from East Providence who was laid off. Apparently hundreds of teachers are being laid off, like in East Providence and maybe Providence. I'm just quoting what this actual teacher told me. So I find it amazing, and awful, but I'm just letting you know that if you or your school department had to do that, you wouldn't be alone at all. I mean, that's apparently being done. Just mentioning it as a fact, not really any comment from me. And then the last,
enough, it's not good company to be in.
No, I know. Hundreds is better than 10 or something. I don't know. And potentially like next year they could be hired back. I mean, that's always what I would keep bringing up is this year. And my personal opinion is next year's not going to be anything like this year. I think it was a very off year, a different type of year. The other thing, Jerry, you said, which it just caught me off guard, is that you said that the U.S. Constitution.
Rhode Island Constitution.
Okay, thank you. All right, yeah, thank you. I think that's all. I know that you have a difficult task, and I wish you the best. I think if we can just keep in mind it's just this year, and make up everything next year for it. I hope. I don't know if that makes it any easier for you or not. And the students themselves, I have big questions on whether it's the distance learning works, and because you haven't done it every year, so it's a new thing to you. Whereas let's say take Florida or some other state, I don't know, different states. I'm not really up on that, but I know Florida does quite a bit of it. That they may be more used to it, and I think they have interaction with teachers in between too. So it's different than totally being distance learning. So I completely sympathize with what you have to go through.
Thanks.
So we can just get through the best that we can this year.
Yeah, we laid off 40 teachers. We haven't been able to call any of them back yet. A lot of local districts have been able to call all their teachers back. East Providence is a much bigger district, so I guess it would be in the hundreds.
Jerry,
yeah.
Did you just say, what did you just say you laid off? What did you just say? I'm sorry, I didn't hear
40.
you. Hear you.
In 40.
In Tiverton.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
What percentage of that?
You know, I was just thinking about that. I want to say we have about a staff of 230. So it's 20%, something like that. I don't quote me on that number, but it's big. It's big. And we had actually laid off, I think, 8 beforehand in March or something. So no, this was a significant percentage of our teaching staff. We would like to call all of them back. I don't know. I can't predict that we will be able to call all of them back. I do think we will need to call some of them back. Again, the budget is really very difficult. So I don't know.
Jerry, can I ask you a question quick?
Yep.
Did that number of 43 layoffs not include those individuals who could be bumped? Because if I remember right,
that's correct.
Peter told me that number would really be like 24.
So when
all is said and done.
Yeah. When all is said and done, and again, all is said and done usually in June about this type of an issue.
Right.
So yes, that is correct. I am. So we can't function with 40 teachers gone. I can tell you that much. Who will be able to call? We will be able to call back, and when we will be able to call back is as yet unknown because of all of the budgetary uncertainties, as well as the format that the schools will be functioning under. So, and we'll probably have to make other cuts in, administrative staff and, this is all on top of, 1.4, 1.6 million, then $1.4 million in different types of cuts. And we have structural deficits that we're going to face next year as well, and it's probably not too helpful to talk about next year right now because we have so much to deal with this year, but there's a lot of stuff.
Mr. Larkin, is that something that you typically do like every summer, that you lay off teachers and then you call back who you can? Is that something that happens every year? I mean, a layoff?
It's not something that happens every year. It is, I don't know, you could probably set your watch by it to a certain extent. Every year districts have to, because they're by statute required to make their to make teacher non-renewals or layoffs by March 1st, you have to, because you don't know what because you don't know what your teaching requirements are ultimately going to be. Ultimately, there are many years when you have to make these decisions and you give non-renewal notices to 5-6 teachers, sometimes none, sometimes 1 or 2. I've never seen it be more than 5 or 6. And in most cases, they are called back as we straighten out the budget over the course of the budget season. This is certainly the first time I've ever seen 40. So.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Excuse me, Jay, a point of order.
Yes.
Someone has their phone that is not silenced, and it keeps.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, so take your phone and you just push the little button so it's silenced, and then you can still get messages, but it will quit binging to the rest of us.
I thought it was my hearing aids but acting up.
I want to point out that we have breathing guy involved, and that could be him.
Okay, now I'm gonna try to refocus everybody on one point here. We're still in a worst case scenario here. So what we're doing is sort of looking at our first issue is, what must we do to keep us from going over the cap? Because that's something we cannot do.
Jay, are you done with me? Have you guys?
Yes, are we done with Jerry?
Yes,
Thank you very much, Jerry.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you,
Watch
guys.
out for
I'm gonna take
bears,
off.
Jerry. Watch out for bears.
And
Okay, the other thing we cannot do is go below maintenance of effort for the school department. We also have to make sure we fund our contractual obligations, on and on and on and on and on. So instead of us getting upset by the idea that we may have to level fund the school department, let's just use it and see where it gets us. And if we end up in a situation where we're significantly below the 4%, or if we see our way clear to give back to whoever we choose to give back money to, we can do it. But we can't agonize over who we're hurting. Our first priority here should be to get the budget where it belongs and see what we can do from there, as much as it hurts. All right, so the town council contingency fund, they want to increase that by $18,000 from $67,000 to $85,000. I don't think we've considered this before. Anybody have any comment on that? Town Council 1020. It's on, if your pages are numbered, it's page number 5. Highlighted in red.
So
Well, that tends to be the where they put items if they have contracts that are being settled.
that's exactly what that is. That's
Yeah.
many of our department directors contract raise issues are up for consideration, and very similar to what Jerry said. I know they got about $1 million in increases. These guys have not had an increase, and we have deferred them until after the FTR. So that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to get them. It's just the council needs to have money to do them.
All right, so does anybody disagree with doing that?
So the request is to take it from the current 67,000 to
Correct.
to what?
85, which is an $18,000 increase.
And that covers the
Department directors.
it's the department directors increases.
That's the lion's share of it, I believe.
Yeah, remember we deferred none of the department heads got the 2% or 3% or 4% raises that the town council had recommended.
And those that were due between February and June, I did not execute because we cut everything. We stopped all spending. So some of them are compounded.
So these were already approved?
No, they are not.
They're not.
This is just a bucket of monies for the council to draw from if they're so inclined. They can't do it with no money. And basically there was no money to do it. So when we went through the budget, I didn't even dawn on me to look at the department director salaries. None of them had increases on them.
Joe?
It's like we keep doing this differently. Years past, we put it in the salary account. I mean, you know, right in the line item for the specific manager. So
They did. And then the decision was made to not give them, you know.
yeah, and the money went back into the general fund, but it was in a specific account.
I thought it went into contingency.
That's where
It would go back into the general fund if the raises weren't given,
that's what happened.
the way it was done years past.
Yeah.
But they've also
I'm
used
just-
that contingency line for when they were still settling contracts.
Yeah,
I know, and then there was an unexpected fund and things. We had different, I'm
Right.
just saying, there's been different ways it's been done. So I don't know. I guess it's one way or another, as long as the job gets done, I guess. So I'm not really objecting. I was only pointing out that we've done it different ways.
Oh, exactly. This is just another way of doing it with the same result. All right.
If we're cutting up to 40 jobs with the schools, is it right to give a raise?
Is it
We
okay?
haven't given them a raise.
You give the schools $1 million worth of raises for their teachers? And not
Are the
give
schools,
the
are
town
the schools giving raises?
They're
That's what
contractually getting raises.
Jerry Locken said his increase, part of this year's issue was there's $1 million worth of raises.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
All right. So are we agreed that in principle, we will add $18,000 to the town council contingency fund? We're not voting on it, just when we get to the point where we do, it would be nice to know if anybody is opposed at this time. Okay, I don't see anybody opposed. If you go to page 6, we've already talked about these, with the exception for the financial town referendum. Nancy Mello, in her letter, for the reasons that she stated, would like to add another $10,000 to this, so it would become $33,000. And as Jennifer eloquently stated, voting is a right and we need to support it, and we got to make sure we can do it in every way possible so that the greatest number of people can participate.
So you also need to go back to page 4 under elections.
I'm sorry. Oh, did I miss that one? I glossed over that one. Yeah. Well, it's not page 4, it's our page 5.
Oh, yeah.
Under Board of Canvassers, elections restricted. Nancy Mello wanted to add $15,000 to that, which would make it $65,000 for the same reasons.
Yep.
Complete uncertainty of how we are going to be able to conduct and operate our election process and what it's going to involve and what expenses are required. So she wants to have an adequate cushion there so that she can perform her functions. Sherry.
This is, go ahead. I'm sorry, Sherry. Go
Oh,
ahead.
that's okay. I just wanted to ask, so I know you had read it, that you said that Nancy Mello said that she could not, that she could not mail a ballot to everybody. My question is can the state mandate that she has to do that? I just, as a curiosity, since she said it was going to cost her so much money, can they mandate that she has to mail them out?
No, I don't think so. What has to happen is if she had to mail out ballots to everybody, that would be everybody on the active and inactive rolls. So we're mailing out like what, 15,000 ballots, which is crazy.
Yeah.
For a normal election, she prints and has available about 3,500. What could happen here is instead of one polling place, she might have to use a couple, which involves more poll workers, more cleaning, all that rigmarole. Unless she can find a way to like do it in one place, like the high school gymnasium, and figure it out. But regardless, she needs to have enough money there to meet perceived needs, let's put it that way.
Yeah, no, I
Yes.
agree with that. I know, I agree that.
And right now, she only has $39,000 in the election account. Now, she has no problem really dragging these accounts down because next year, there's no elections. Except the FDR. But we need to have enough to get us through what's going on now. So does everybody understand what she's asking for? And while I'm at it, I will mention, she hasn't sent me a copy of it yet. She wants to amend the resolution that speaks to the elections account. Because right now, if we had a shortfall in the FTR line item, we could not use the election account. So she wants to put language in there that would cover just this year to allow that to occur. So in other words, the election account would be able to serve both needs if necessary. And as soon as I get that, I'll forward to everybody and everybody will know what it is. So as far as let me get my brain going here. All right, so on Board of Canvassers 1030, elections restricted. It's currently, our recommendation was $50,000. She would like to see us make it $65,000. Does anybody have any problem with that for the reasons stated? Joe, you still around? Okay. You disappeared.
It's all for the same reasons, right?
It's all for the same reason.
Yeah.
Okay, so that probably won't be an issue when we come to vote on it.
And then Jay, could you go over again for the FTR? What is the new amount?
The FTR, we had doubled it, remember? Normally it's 11,500. There's going to be 2 FTRs, so we made it 23,000. And Nancy Mello would like us to add 10,000 to that. So the new number would be 33,000. Okay. Yep.
Yep. Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, page 7, which is land use. We had removed ourselves we had reduced, well, with Chris Cotta's help.
Jay, Denise is in the waiting room or would like to talk.
And she's muted.
Oh, Denise. I thought she left. Denise, you still there?
Hang on. Can you unmute yourself? There you go.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. I'm just watching. If you need any information, I'm here for a while.
Oh, this is Denise de Medeiros.
This is Denise de Medeiros.
We got too many Denises. Okay, so we got a town council member in the wings if anybody has a question for them. All right, so under land use, we had reduced the department manager's salary by $3,000. We had done away with vacation for the building official. We had reduced the postage. We had reduced education seminars. We had reduced professional tech services. We had eliminated boarding for buildings. That's about all we did on that page. We've already talked about these things in the past.
Yep.
Next page. Reevaluation, restricted. The request was made that or the suggestion was made that we could reduce that from 40,000 to 30,000. I don't think we talked about that last time.
That was a recommendation from Dave.
Dave, yeah.
And if Dave says he can do it, I'm going to believe him. Next page. Tax collector. Tax bills and postage. We already talked about this. It went up by a ton because of, well, the fact that we are doing several different tax bills this year. It's all about postage.
And programming.
And, yeah. So I take it we worked all our problems out with that vendor?
I don't have a final on it, but yeah, mechanically it's working. We'll find out after we do the FTR, because what will happen is whatever assessments are in the system will be credited out, the new assessments will be loaded in. So, and then they have to regurgitate the numbers for the last 3 quarters to equal what the annual would be by deducting out the first. So it's a process.
It'll figure in a credit for what they've already paid.
Right.
Okay. All right. Under insurance, we reduced by advisement the group health insurance by $30,000. Workman's comp.
We had just paid our workers' comp for the year, and it was $15,000 less than what we anticipated.
Yeah, that's something we had discussed, but it's come up.
Right.
And that came from, I guess, you and Denise.
Right.
So we can trust that one. Yep. Who? Somebody said, Okay, forget it. Under pension plans and employee retirement, we had one person that dropped out of the special retirement, so that reduced that by $8,000. We took out the $100,000 in OPEB. We had been discussing that. I think the decision is, well, does anybody disagree with doing that?
Wasn't that one of the suggestions from the council?
It was from the council and from Chris, and we sort of put it on the back burner, but now it's here.
And we said we're going to kind of hold our breath and just do it.
Yep.
It's kicking the can down the road, but this is the year if we, there's a lot of cans being kicked this year.
Well, I think everybody looking at me now knows I don't like to do that, but this is one of those times. On the next page, under fire department operating expenses, we took the chief's seminar salary or that line item out, zeroed it. We haven't dealt with any of the rest of it. I will make a comment that I was asked by somebody why we had not laid off a bunch of town employees. And my response to that was a lot of these like the fire department and the police department, they have contractual manning levels. And there are definitely consequences to going below those. So we can't just simply go below the manning levels to balance the budget.
We are also, as the budget committee, Jay, we also can't do policy. We can't do personnel changes.
I agree, but we could not introduce a budget figure to the fire department that would require them to lay people off. The next page under police department, first class salaries. After the debacle, when that was first suggested, that's been put back. The next page, there was nothing. Page after that, there was nothing. Okay, the page that starts Public Works. There had been a suggestion made to reduce that number for maintenance workers. That got put back. Paving and drainage. We had sort of looked at the idea of not funding paving and drainage. And as I mentioned earlier in the evening, there is money being put in that account. So if we do not add to it, it's not as if it's going to be zero. There's still going to be around $500,000 in that account.
Well, Denise said 525.
Okay, 525.
So even more in that account than was requested.
Well, this would be, yeah, there's more than in now, and plus we would have added 500,000 to it. So it would have been 1,025,000.
So let me ask you a question. Do you add the money in here now and then add that in as revenue? Is that how you do this?
No. No. No.
Okay, I just want to make sure it's done right. That's all.
So if the money is spent from a reserve account, it's kept.
So it doesn't need to be appropriated?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right, I want to make sure.
It's already resolved that it's there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just don't know where you get the spending authority. So that's.
Resolution.
Okay.
The resolution defines where it came from and what to do with it.
Okay. All right. I'm fine with it. It's just contrary to the way that I used to do it years ago, and that's fine. It's been a while since I've been here, so.
And in addition, we're already a month into the next year.
Well, we haven't spent any capital or any paving, so don't worry about it.
Well, to be clear, Chris, we still have a spending freeze, right?
We do.
Big time.
Yes, we do.
So can I just ask Jake, because I know we said we were cutting the paving and drainage and the guardrails. Did we also take out the line painting?
No.
Well, I've got a highlight on that to ask.
So
We did not.
we do have some issues to deal with line painting that's been required by the DOT
Okay.
and by some of our developments that we do need to do some line painting. The guardrail, we have really never used until this past year. We did have to put a guardrail up in the industrial park to stop anybody from driving out onto Route 24. So if you come out of Progress Way, there's no guardrail there. So, you know, it needed to have a guardrail put in before something happened. I know it doesn't get a lot of activity now, but eventually it will. So that's been rectified, but we don't put up a lot of guardrails normally.
So line painting isn't just something that we decide. The DOT also.
DOT, and then some of the developments as they go through planning require some things. And we do have a group that, like I would say up behind where Grand Century used to be, there is some line painting that needs to be on some of those roads up there. So there is some line painting that needs to be done.
Okay.
How much is requested?
2,000.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like street lighting, that we took a lot out of that. Ultimately, we reduced that by $50,000 from the original request. Okay, now here comes the big one that rubbish and recycling. You'll notice the suggestion has been made that we level fund that. All right, so what's driving that decision? Part of it is the opinion that the DEM may yet grant us some accommodation on what we can do with the landfill. And of course, they may not. As we discussed at one of our previous meetings, if we have to continue starting in November with the idea of trucking trash to Johnston, then obviously $738,000 isn't going to take us for the full year. But the thought has been presented that, okay, if that happens, the town council could enact yet another ordinance which would attach a fee to all the residences in town for trash pickup. You've heard me refer to it as the Middletown model. So what Middletown does is at the beginning of the year, they charge everybody $142 to participate in their trash pickup plan. And in addition, they have pay-as-you-throw bags.
Right.
Now, as mentioned at a town council meeting, if we got to the point where we ran out of money, then we in turn could enact a fee, not $142 a year, but maybe, who knows, 40, 50, to take care of that shortfall. And the ultimate goal would be going forward over the course of maybe a year or two to make that kind of system pay for trash. So it would like fund itself. It's not the best, it may not be the best plan, but it's doable. A little drastic, maybe we'd save on almost $421,000. So we need to bat this around a bit.
So just, you know, what that 421 represents, it represents the additional cost of trucking from November to June to Johnston and the tipping fees it would cost to dump the trash.
Mm-hmm. Any questions? Denise Medeiros is here. She's on the town council. She was in the thick of this. Joe.
Well, this would happen with a new town council. So you're asking a town council that hasn't been elected yet, you know, to do some policy. Yeah, I just think that's kind of, you know, a little too speculative for us. I just think we need to fund it. It's unfortunate, but we need to fund it. And then if it doesn't happen, if we get a break, then, you know, the money I think could be transferred in other places in the budget or whatever, or go back to the general fund. I think we need to fund it. And that's an unfortunate situation that we're going to have to deal with because there's been such a big push to close the landfill. So we're stuck with the bill. I think we just need to pay. As far as throwing another fee on people, I don't know. I had talked about maybe raising the fees for the bags. I mean, I pay.
The fees for the bags go for the closure of the landfill, Joe.
But once the landfill is closed.
It's not going to be closed.
I said, once it's closed, we're still going to be using bags and it's still going to be revenue.
And you're still going to be putting that money in the landfill closure account because it's not enough money to close the landfill.
Well, eventually we're going to have to float a bond.
Well,
a small bond.
So you want to
if it's not enough.
You're trying to set policy.
I'm not trying to set policy.
You're saying the money's going to go to do something else than what it's intended for. Right now, it's intended.
What I'm saying is, since I worked on the bag program from its inception and helped to promote it, is what we said was, once the landfill is closed, it can go to offset the additional cost of trucking. That's what the original discussion by the council at the time was. And I believe that you have to not only vote on a policy and the people accepted that, but you have to live by the words that was spoken at that meeting, the intent. It's not just the legislation, it's the intent of the legislation. And when you promise people something, then you need to follow through with it.
Yeah, well, finish funding the closure fund.
Well, if, you know, we have
okay,
nine
guys.
something in there now. If we go beyond the 9 million when we get the bid, then we're gonna have to float a bond. It's not gonna
Okay.
be, we're gonna pay for it out of bag fees every year. The bag fees will, yes, go into the general fund and help float the bond or whatever it is. But, you know, the bottom line is we would have to float a bond to continue to close that landfill. If it goes over the 9 million, which I'm probably assuring that it's probably going to.
Okay, guys, look. I'm just bringing this up because it was brought up in discussion. It's an option. We can do it or not do it. Like I said, we're not going to vote on this tonight, but be prepared to vote on it on Monday.
So we did have a meeting.
It's a simple decision. Do we want to adopt level funding or do we want to go with the original request?
So just so that you're well aware, we did have a meeting with DEM. We had our engineers with us, we had our lawyers with us. They were very receptive to the issues that we presented to them about redoing the scope or the slope of the top of the landfill before closure. And we believe that they are going to give us the ability to continue to utilize some trash to help make that slope. And we're hoping that they grant us at least till July 1st of next year.
Which would be great. Okay.
Sherry has the question.
So if that did come to pass, then level funding would be a viable option.
Okay, so that was just my question, was that if, say we were to bring it down to this level and then because we don't have an answer yet, as to what we're going to be able to do, a definite, right? And then I guess my concern is just that where are we going to come up with the money because now I understand that the next council would implement this fee, but it would take a little while to get those fees collected. So, you know, would we be able to collect those fees in time to be able to make this up? You know what I'm saying? If we were to deduct it now for 2021, because
That's a valid question, but
be able to get the fees together till the following, you know, collect enough fees for it to be viable to use for at least a year.
So I think we could get the fees collected in time.
And it's a valid question, but keep in mind, none of this stuff is going to happen like with the snap of a finger. So, you know, if it was level funded, you know, at some point you're going to have a real good idea. No, they're not going to go for this. We're going to have to haul trash.
Jay.
And at that time, you need to take some action. Denise, are you trying to say something?
Yeah, we're gonna find out, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. We're gonna find out pretty within the next few weeks whether or not we have this done. I don't think that it'll concern the next council, because by that point, keep in mind, we have to close it by November. So I would hope that this council would think ahead, and if we find out that we can't close it, then we'll have to make a decision. Correct. We did this because we are pretty confident after talking to Mike and Chris that we are going to get the extension until June. We were trying to find some kind of money that we could save, and this is where it would come from, because we wouldn't have to spend that if it goes until June. Now, if it doesn't go till June, the suggestion was that we do charge people until June and then make the decision then, because then we'll have a clearer view of our budget, our revenue, and see what happens then.
All right, so there is a plan. Okay. I'm sorry?
Does Chris agree with me that we'll get a decision?
No, I agree with you.
Okay.
Okay, so
Can I just say one thing, Jay?
yes, Jeb, please
Because
do.
well, at that council meeting, I think Trish had suggested, kind of floated this idea, and I thought it was a good idea, that you ask people if they were interested in trash pickup, and it would be, X number of dollars for them to do that. And it'd be every week or every other week or whatever the plan was that was set up. But they would not be just sending out extra bills to every taxpayer. So I know, Joe, that was a concern to you, but it was not going to be just sent out from what her suggestion was anyway.
Correct, Deb. People will have the option to join the program or not.
And they sort of already do. There are a good number of people in town, my next door neighbor among them, that independently have their trash picked up by the same trash company for $40 a month. Ruth, you're muted.
I like the idea. I don't know if Denise, if you were saying this is true, but I like the idea of paying for how much trash you dispose of, and not just a blanket like $50 a month for everyone, because I think it's just a little bit more fair to pay as you dispose of. And if that's what Denise was, I think, referring to, or not.
No, it isn't what I'm referring to. If you want your trash picked up by the town, there'll be a fee. If not, people will have to get their own private trash company.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So I just wanted, Jay, if I could just understand this.
Yeah, Joe.
People would be notified that if they don't pay an additional fee of how much?
We don't know.
That their trash won't be picked up. That's what the proposal. So we don't fund it. And then if it doesn't work out, then we tell people, if you want your trash picked up, you got to pay $50 more a year. I mean, that's great for people like me to run for council, because I'll never agree to that. Thanks for the campaign ad.
But essentially, only those that are using it are paying for the program. So residents that aren't using it aren't paying for it.
Right, but what I was saying, I still like it, pay as you dispose, and that doesn't do that. And you could have one bag every 2 weeks, or you could have 5 bags every week, and you're paying the same $50. That's what I'm seeing.
Okay, but look, this is a conversation to have with the town council at a town council meeting, not with us.
That's fine.
All I'm trying to illustrate to people here is there is an option of level funding trash, and what the discussion around that was.
Thank you, Jay.
Okay.
Jay.
Yeah. Denise, did you say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to make people aware that we were trying to find ways to save money. This is just something we're suggesting. That's all, because we were trying to find savings. We just thought that if the DEM does give us permission to open till June, then there's money there that's savings.
Yeah, if that happens, if it happens, it's like we're being clairvoyant. And if it doesn't, we got to deal with it. Mike.
That's right.
Thank you. I know that I brought this up the last time we met. I brought up the trash issue. I just wanted to make a point. Everyone has valid concerns. I mean, I understand Joe's concern as well. And I know the council has been talking about this with Chris. And I just think that in the era that we're moving towards, I mean, COVID has taught us all a valuable lesson. We were able to give the residents of this town, I think the last 3 straight years, tax breaks, which is great. Listen, all of us sitting on the Zoom meeting, we're all taxpayers. I mean, I love a tax break too. Unfortunately, when we compare ourselves to our neighboring towns, none of our neighboring towns have included trash pickup. And I just think that with reducing taxes, one of the things we've always said, we want to preserve services, right? So this is the delicate balance, reducing or stabilizing taxes, but preserving services. And we've gotten to a point, like it or not, whether the casino funds, revenues or not, COVID, we just can't afford to keep everything anymore. So before we come to vote on this next week, I just want to say that those models that other towns of Middletown and Portsmouth are doing, they work. They give people options. Is it fair to tell our own residents, hey, we're taking something from you that was essentially free? I mean, I know that stinks, but we're in an unprecedented time, and we have to do things because we have to pay the bills. And I don't want to lose my free trash pickup either, but I also don't want my taxes to skyrocket. So as members of the budget committee, I just implore everyone to keep that in mind when we come back to vote on that on Monday. Thanks.
Okay, continuing down on this page under landfill operations, the suggestion was made to include the landfill equipment rental cover from $17,000 to $30,000, an increase of $13,000. Chris, why did we want to do that?
So if we keep the landfill open, we are going to need, Rick had only budgeted based on a November closing. So if we keep it open, we need cover to cover the trash every day. And then if we keep it open, we're also going to have to repair the second bulldozer, which has substantial, we need it because once the primary goes down, we don't have a backup. So, you know, I've been dancing on this issue since April about having a bulldozer that doesn't work, praying that the current one, and we've had issues with the current one. We've looked all over, we can't find anywhere to rent one similar to what we have. They don't make them like that anymore. And nobody does trash like we do. Now, could we get by? But I don't, you know, that money was not going to get spent unless we get agreement from DEM that we can actually keep that landfill going for at least till June. So
okay, so that just gives us the cushion we need in case that decision is made in our favor.
Right.
Okay.
And then on-site wastewater, you know, I do need to sit with them to go through that program, but it is a very small program at the moment. And right now we don't have any loan funds for that septic system. We will be getting some hopefully by mid-October. So we think that we can make a reduction in that account.
Okay. Any discussion on those items?
So for those who don't know, the loan fund is the town borrows about, at any given time, I think we've done $2.9 million over since probably the early 2000s. And they allow people to have failed septic systems to repair their septic systems up to an amount of $25,000. They deed restrict the loan and the loans get paid back to the infrastructure bank through Rhode Island Housing Mortgage. That program has run out of funds. It's and it needs to be replenished. So I don't know if that helps you understand what that program is. And the wastewater department is charged with overseeing some of the on-site wastewater issues around town.
So Chris, are you saying zero it out?
No, I didn't say zero it out. We just dropped it by 10,000.
Okay, so to
So
20.
it's budgeted for
20.
30, it's dropped to 20.
Okay.
Okay, building maintenance, the part-time seasonal laborer that we traditionally, well, that was new a couple of years ago.
Yeah, we didn't fund it. We didn't do anything for the summer with it, but we will probably at least through the spring and early next summer.
Okay, so that got
We'll
reduced
definitely need
by,
something in the spring.
that got reduced by $7,160.
Yeah.
Okay, the next page.
Jay, because this is the last page that we have like departments and salaries.
Yep.
And I just want to bring a thought up before we kind of leave that area. Because we did talk about schools earlier and we talked about contingency and we talked about contractual obligations. As we go through and we look at all the different departments, the police department, the public works, all of our other town departments, we've funded all of those departments to their contractual obligations. So all the salary increases that we've already agreed to, we didn't take any reductions. We funded those. We put money into contingencies for raises that will be given this year. And why I bring the comparison up is when we talk about the school department and we talk about level funding, we talk about giving them the exact same money that we gave them last year, regardless of their contractual obligations. So they've already negotiated with their new, and however we feel about teachers receiving raises, or those negotiations have already taken place. And Chris brought it up when he said, when we were talking about the contingency fund, he said, well, you're giving teachers $1 million more. But if we level fund the school department, and it's just a thought, when we level fund the school department, we don't take into consideration their contractual obligations. We give them the exact same amount of money we gave them last year, regardless if they had any negotiations with their unions. But on the town side, we're funding every single pay raise without even, because that's a contractual obligation.
And we do it every year.
And yeah. So I just wanted to bring that up because we're at the bottom of salaries and that's the last department. But when we talked about this earlier, about not talking about the town as a whole, correct? We have all these different things that we have to look at, and we have to be a whole. It's not an us against them analogy. But when we sit and finish this budget and you've funded all of the town salaries, we take the teachers into a different, and the school department into a different realm, because we don't have to fund that, but they have contractual obligations that they have to meet.
Okay, I don't know who was first. Tom?
Me.
Okay, Joe, don't fight over it.
Well, I actually was, but because I started when she started.
That's fine.
All right, first off, schools don't have binding arbitration and minimum manning. So those two things alone kind of restrict us with police and fire. But we didn't hire, if I understand correctly, Public Works is down, and the clerk's office, wanted more help and didn't get it. So the schools are unique too, because they're not going to have summer sports, summer busing. A lot of the activity busing is going to be. So I mean, there's a lot of savings at the school with salaries that's going to allow them to keep the majority of the teachers there. So I don't think we hurt the schools. That's just my opinion.
Tom?
Yeah, I just want to be a little bit academic about this. Here we are going through the expenses of the town, which includes salaries as well as lots of items that we're spending most of our time going and trying to reduce. Now, the school bottom line number that we have, it's the same thing for them. They have salaries and they have lots of line items that they need to go through and reduce. So I think I don't think it's apples and apples unless you look at it the way that I just talked about.
But they already explained to us that 98% of their budget is salaries. So how is it not?
It's actually 98%.
Well, therein lies part of our problem. You got one group where 90% of whatever the number really
Sorry,
is.
I'll correct. It was 90%, not 98%.
Okay, whatever the number really is. Let's say 90% of their salaries is, or budget is salaries, where on the town side, that isn't the case.
And what are the totals? The totals for the salaries on the town side versus school side? I'd like to know that too.
I haven't done that, but it really doesn't. It really doesn't add to what we have to do to know that. Sherry?
I know that this is a subject that is really hard to talk about. But I mean, part of the reason why this is so touchy is because the schools negotiated a lot of those contracts before this happened, and so a lot of those pay increases and things that they negotiated. So I'm in line to agree with what Tom just said, because it's kind of like we have to, as hard as it is for us to go through this budget and say this is what we have to do for every department, I we're yes, we haven't cut a lot out of salaries on the town side, but we cut everything out of the capital budget on the town side.
Right.
So it's like it's not going to be equal. It's not going to be. There's not a perfect scenario for because the school accounts for such a large portion of our budget. You know, I just don't think that there's any way that you can, like Tom said, just look at it exactly the same, because they're just very different. It's very different scenarios, and we have to do, things that that none of us want to do this year.
Jay, I have a question, a
Yes,
comment
Ruth.
on the school budget, which and is their decision and everything, but and I think what Mike said too, we all learned from this experience, but even if we hadn't had this, everybody has to have what is called a rainy day fund, and not spend to your max. Every household in the town doesn't spend everything they have to buy whatever they like. It just doesn't work like that. You set aside money in case things go wrong, in case something happens. And I just think that when you're budgeting for teachers, when you're giving raises, that you should make sure that you think it's really going to be sustainable, even if something really bad happens. I mean, it doesn't have to be a virus. It could be something else, so I'm a big fan of not spending to your max, and also having a rainy day fund. It's just not giving, I mean, I don't think the town employees got 3% for 3 years. I think that you have to be a little bit careful with the negotiation, and that's part of the issue. The unions are so strong, it's hard to push back. I actually remember when Superintendent Rearick was pushing back, and I don't know what happened. People were throwing something at his windows, and I don't know, it gets really ugly, and I don't like that. I think that we should be able to the unions work with others that are making those contracts in a way that is fair. I'm not involved in it. I understand that you guys, Jerry and the school department are, but I've seen it get ugly, and I think we have to be really careful on how it's done. Not we, but it has to be careful, because if this happens, then you're laying off teachers, and that's not good. So it's a very difficult situation. I understand. I just want to throw out a few of those comments. So just thank you.
All right. So we're on the last page, and that brings up one thing.
Brendan had a comment.
Who? Brendan, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I just thank you, Jen Jocelyn. I completely agree. I think the school committee and department, that it is apples to apples in terms of what they need to do. There's a police, laugh, Ruth, if you will, there's a police union, there's a fire union, all the municipal employees, and they all negotiate in good faith on behalf of their employees. And this is something that the school is clearly taking a big hit. And so I do think it's apples to apples in terms of looking at what on the town side as well as to the school.
But the 3% isn't there that they got at the school. So it isn't, they don't do the same planning. They don't do the same negotiating.
Well, I disagree in that if we looked at where we stand compared to all the other school districts, and I, for one, and you can choose if you want, but I don't want to be bottom of the barrel that in terms of this town. So there's decisions about how people get paid and what their rates are. And I thought it was very clear that Tiverton comes in at middle of the pack or below middle of the pack in terms of all of their pay and their expenses. And I, for one, will not vote to have us to be at the very bottom.
Okay, Brendan, I understand that. And everyone wants to have pride in their school district and their school department. But I think it's been proven, I can find the articles, the number of dollars you spend is just not the way to do it. I mean, we're number 5,000 in the US News and World Report, even though we doubled the school budget in 12 years. And there's other towns, all across the country who spend less per student, et cetera. I just wish we would get out of the money. Okay, the money is part of it, but it's not all of it. If I heard you say, I'd like to have a seminar where we teach teachers to be enthusiastic and really get kids. I mean, I don't know what it is, but something more along the lines of that. I think the superintendent actually was saying he's trying to have seminars for teachers, which I thought was great. But that's the kind of thing I would want to hear, is a little bit more than just, let's give them more money. Let's give them more money. It just gets a little bit, it doesn't make logical sense to me, Brendan. And I know you really think that it's highly of this, and I do too, of the schools, but there's other factors. There's just other factors. There's a tendency with tenure to rest on your laurels. There's a lot of issues. Teachers aren't always.
But you don't say that about the police or the fire department or about the union employees and other areas. And
Oh yeah, I hold the police to a very high standard. I've seen.
Okay, guys, listen.
My only point was, if
we're getting
we're
in
just
philosophy
talking
here.
about contractual obligations,
Yes.
if we're just talking about contractual obligation, not how you feel about a teacher, not how you feel about the school department, not what your personal feelings are. If we're just looking at contractual obligations, we're meeting the town's contractual obligations for salaries, but we're not allowing that for the schools. It's that simple. If you give them the same money that you gave them last year,
there's two police openings.
Okay, listen.
Two police openings.
It's whatever you think. Either way, it's going to result in, when they get the same amount of money they got last year, and the contractual obligations aren't looked at, you're telling them to let the teachers go. It's that simple.
Can I do a point of order? Can we move on? Can I do a point of order? Can we move on, please?
Yes, we
I want to
can.
eat dinner, guys. Please, let's go. Come on.
Now,
don't be rude.
One other thing that has come up.
Point of order. Point of order. Let's move.
Police
Point of
are
order.
not filling two positions. It's relevant.
Ruth.
Police are not
Point
filling
of order.
two open positions, Jen. Okay. Very important, Jay.
44, losing 44 teachers. What's the
Listen.
difference? One person versus another. Two to 44. It's
Much more differences than that.
Jay, I'm calling a point of order. We got to move on. Point of
I'm gonna
order.
start muting people if this doesn't stop. I mean it. Now, the next thing that we have to look at is the issue of the SRO. And I neglected to ask Jerry Larkin if they planned to not fund the SRO. Because the simple fact is, if the school decides not to, then we must. It's a contractual obligation. We have to have the school SRO, whether he is at the school building or not. So the $62,000 that we traditionally get reimbursed may not happen, and we may need to absorb that whole thing on the municipal side.
Every time they've talked, they've had a school committee meeting where they've had the slides up and everything. That has never been removed from the cuts. So I would bet that they're not going to, especially if they're looking at level funded, they're not going to put it back again.
Well, I had heard that it might be, but I don't know it. But in any event, if the school were to not fund the SRO, then we do not simply say, okay, then we can lay him off. We can't. We have to keep him here. He has to be on the day shift. He can only work weekdays. And if the school is open, whether they have paid for him or not, we must provide him. Tom.
Yeah, before we move on, I just want to mention that early, I think Denise mentioned in the previous category that for us to address under summer recreation, directors and counselors, transportation fees, and winter recreation. Do we want to address that now, those numbers?
No.
No?
You can't vote on it now. That's the issue.
No.
There's no.
We could agree that, what does that amount to? 8, 9, 10, 11, $11,860. Am I correct?
Right.
So the suggestion was made that we could reduce the amount for summer recreation by that amount. And does anybody disagree with it being able to do that? Okay, so we're not voting on it, but then it should not become an argument on Monday when we get back to it.
Well, and we did kind of, if we were gonna talk about that, we didn't talk about civic appropriations, but being that there are other things that the town, that we may decide that that money could be used for, I would like to try to talk about whether we can look at taking away the civic appropriations amounts that we put in.
Do you mean to reduce them or?
Reduce them, or yes.
Or eliminate them, or whatever what did you have in mind?
Yeah, well, I mean, since we, again, there are only a couple that we decided to give. I know they're small amounts of money, but there may be something else if we're really going through this to try to cut back and then see where we need to give back if we end up at a place where we can put back money. I just think that those may be things that we want to also cut out. And the only thing I think my suggestion would be, or just so you know, I mean, when we come to voting, I'd want to take away the money for the visiting nurses. And I am not sure whether East Bay Community Action is getting any assistance or extra assistance because of CARES or not. The only thing that worries me about taking money away from them is I know they run Head Start. And I'm not really sure whether they're going to get any, extra funds to try to help them out, or if they get extra money from Providence. I don't think we've ever had, I've not heard a lot about what exactly the $5,000 goes for, but I think lunches and things like that to help Head Start. So I wouldn't, I don't know that I want to cut any of that. Again, this is just if we're going to end up going back to vote through all of this. Trying to see what we had done, the Newport County Women's Resources. And
if you recall, at one of our previous meetings,
mm-hmm.
Jennifer Rashley got us to increase that to $500. And we agreed to do that.
It used to be about 2,000.
Right.
When we first started on the budget committee. And in addition, within the first couple months of the COVID pandemic, the rate of abuse against women skyrocketed.
Be with you in a minute, Mike.
And here we go.
He's wiping his computer screen.
It's not that I don't. All of us have, causes that are, near and dear to our heart. Cancer. There are a lot of things that are all, and I understand that, Jennifer. Really, I do. I guess I'm just saying, I think out of everything that we've had to cut, that taking things that are in my, extra things that we normally would love, to put money into, and I don't know why these are the only ones that are chosen, and it's, again, I don't think that choosing what is important to one or a couple of us is a good thing for the whole town, because everybody in the town has, civic appropriations that they'd like to see money get given to.
Can I say something, Sherry?
Yes,
Hey, off, because we're going. It's going between you and.
I just want to think about.
No. But I had my hand up. Hold on. I had my hand up. It went from you to Jennifer. Jennifer didn't have her hand up. It went back to you. I continue with my hands up. My hands are getting tired. I'd like to call point of order. I'd like to move on, please. I was doing it the right way, but I can't hold back now. Thank you. We're rambling on. Can we continue, please?
You're right. All right, so that brings us to what the total municipal and capital expenses add up to. And just as a matter of interest, we have reduced the municipal and capital sides by $2,188,000 and change. So the argument that we're not taking anything away from the municipal side does not hold water. So, Tom, you've done the tax levy worksheet. And with the, if you add in what we wanted, what we might add to the elections account, to the FDR, those things, how does that change the document that we all have in front of us right now? It started out being a 3.99% levy increase.
Well, the part I want to clarify is that the school budget had to be increased by $236,000, around $237,000. But Brendan made a point that, okay, if it's added, and that's what the state is giving us, right? So if it's added there, we also need to put it in the revenue somewhere, right?
I think it's already in the revenue.
Oh, you think it's already there?
Yeah, I think it is in revenue.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to add that then. The new number is going to be, is for the school, is $32,126,519.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. So if we trust that and all the changes that we talked about, I'm going to move on to the levy calculation, see where we are.
Before you get there, though,
okay,
can we clarify that number with Denise Surratt? Because that 236,519, I don't know where that number is derived from.
Oh, okay.
And that's why I was asking the question earlier, because I just got the email from Denise Surratt today. I had just emailed her this morning, and her number still was 31,890.
Okay.
So I'd like to clarify that with her first before you, but go ahead. Is a matter of, you know, you might want to increase it now just to see what it would look like on your levy sheet, but
yeah,
you know, I don't know, because of that $194,000 that is still pending to come in. Is that net of that number, or is that gross of? So in other words, do we still have an account payable coming to us? I mean, a receivable that should net out of that 238. That's something we need Denise to weigh in on.
That's what,
right?
that's
Because,
where all this gets confusing as hell.
right.
It's a big number.
But I don't mind for calculation purposes for you to figure out the levy based on a higher number. And then if Denise says it should be a lower number, then we go back to it. But we can clarify that for next week's meeting.
Well, I'll have a talk with them tomorrow for sure.
Yeah.
So anyway, Tom, what do you think?
Before I send the amended thing out, we'll try to iron that out with Denise then. So you might not get this until like Saturday or something. but with that higher number, if you go over to the levy sheet, I could show you if you want to look at it. Let's see. Can you see it?
You're on the budget, not the levy.
We're looking at the budget.
Oh, really?
You got to go way down to get to the levy.
Wait. It's picked the wrong screen. Let's see.
All right. You could probably just scroll it up to it, no?
I have two screens here. Can you see it now?
Yes.
There it is.
All right.
All right, so it becomes 4.3.
No, the
4.67, that's even worse.
4.67 with that big number and other increases. So.
Does that have the increased general fund put in, or what are we taking from the general fund in that analogy?
That's putting in 1.2 million in revenue from the general fund.
If
Right,
we
Tom?
went to 1.5, where do we get?
We cover it because the difference was 245, I think.
I think that took us, I think that'll take us down to somewhere in the range of 3.8.
Well, let's say you want 1.5?
Let's try 1.5.
Yeah, 3.85.
Tom, just for us to do the comparison. So Denise said, can you flip back to that? The minimum or like the low end was 1.64. If you put the 1.64,
If you do that, if you do that, you're just wiping out the general fund balance.
I just wanted to see what the number was. I'm not necessarily recommending it. I just wanted to see what the difference was.
Did you get? 347. So, so another thing we can do is ask Denise what she meant when she gave a range for this maximum number.
Yeah, but that could be in error by up to $250,000.
Yeah.
I really wouldn't go above 1.2 if you can. But.
Oh, I
wouldn't. the 1.2 though, we're over the levy
by a bunch.
Well, I don't believe the school number is correct.
Right. So
that would make a difference.
Big difference.
If what? What would make a difference, Brendan?
So the question is that there was a $237,000 increase that we were told is part of what we have to add to get to the maintenance of effort.
Yeah.
And the question is there revenue that we're not recognizing for that, or is it already embedded in the 7-something million that already comes from the state?
I'm not quite sure.
We're getting an additional. Right, that's what we need to find out.
Right.
Because if you look at Tom's worksheet right here, is what would we need to do to get to the 4%? It's 246,000, 245,950, right?
Right.
There's your number.
Right.
Which is pretty close to that school increase that we're assuming is real.
Exactly.
Well, okay, so I think everybody can see from this exercise that even with all the extreme cuts we've been doing, we're right on top of this 4% max. And we really need to be a little bit below that, because one of the things that happens, and it happens every year, the FTR approves a budget and it has a tax levy. However, what we end up with is a little bit different than what's at the FDR. And part of that is because a letter has to be submitted to the state defining what our tax levy will be, the whole 9 yards. And between the time that the budget is developed and approved and that letter is delivered, a few little things happen with finances. Chris could probably explain this better than me. I mean, it's marginal amount, but it's still there. So my question to him was, okay, what if we develop a budget that's 3.98? And by the time it gets to the state, it's 4.02. Are we in trouble? And he said, no, he didn't think so. They would approve it. But, you know, we just want to sit right on top of this percentage.
Jay.
Yes, Denise.
I have a question, and I'm trying to look through my records here, but you should see my desk. What was our municipal budget last year that was approved?
What?
How much?
23 million.
23 million.
23 million, 141, 227.
That was the petitioner's budget.
Okay. And what right now with all the cuts is the proposed municipal budget?
21,413,719, for a
179.
difference of 1,000,000.
So our budget is, so the difference, so we got, so it was 23 and now it's, what is the difference that we are taking as a decrease?
Hang on.
I have a point here.
I know you do.
2,188,160, correct?
Hang on. I got 1,728,000, so hang on. It's 23,141,277 minus 21,413,179, 1,728,098.
That different than the number,
Right.
Tom, you have on your worksheet?
Think
My
so.
point-
It's the approved budget of 2020 to the budget committee's recommendation is what she's getting to. Right,
So this
Denise?
is-
No,
right,
no.
right.
We had a petitioner's budget that passed last year.
Right. I want to know what actually we got last year and what is proposed we're getting this year.
So in Tom's budget worksheet on his last page, and I don't know if Tom, if you want to put it up,
Okay,
it shows that the approved FTR budget of 2020 was for municipal, not counting school, was 23,141,277.
Right.
And the current budget committee's recommendation is 21,413,179.
This is just a worksheet.
Right.
The-
all right, but-
The only thing with that though, Chris, is that included the capital expenditures, right? So if we
Yeah.
just looked at the municipal expenses, it was 21,767,708.
Yep.
If you take the capital out.
To 21,433.
So,
Which
so
is 583.
21,767,08 was what is approved.
Mhm.
And then we're where it's at on the sheet is on municipal expenses is 21,184,033.
Okay, so my point is, you more than level funded them. You gave us a decrease, am I correct? So we're not
Yes.
level funded on the municipal side, we're decreased. I
Without-
understand,
Without,
I understand your idea about contractual obligations. The town council decided to maintain our contractual obligation and cut in many areas. So the argument that the school committee is getting level funded, well, we're more than level funded. And if the school committee also has contractual obligations, and it's their decision where they want to go with that. But I don't want anybody to think that the town is getting an increase. We are getting a decrease.
You just have to, one of the things that confuses is paving of $500,000 is in the operational expense for the municipality. It's not something that's considered in capital. And it's treated apples to apples from year to year, but there's a big difference in terms of the cut.
The only other
What
thing,
I'm
the only,
saying is- what I'm saying is it's not fair to say that you're not treating the municipal side the way you're treating the school committee side. It's just the town council chose the cuts the way they did, as the school committee chooses the cuts the way they did. But in my opinion, we're both level funded, if not the municipal side even lower.
I think there's two things to look at with that, and this was one of the things that I was always confused with when we first moved here, was when we look at the school budget too, though, that what's in that number, that's not all. I understand that the town has to make it up, but that's not all town appropriation, right? So the money that comes from the state is added into that, where it's not, the municipal side doesn't have that benefit. So that's part of the problem too, is part of that budget is state aid. And the other thing is I don't want it to be an us against them, a town against school, because we're all one community. But the other side is that the town has different things that they put into their budget where the school committee, a majority of it is salaries. So when they cut out everything, and as far as like a rainy day fund, year after year, we've told them to use up that, their reserve account. And now the rainy day came and they don't have it. I'm just, point of order, when we look salary to salary, we funded on one side, and we have to do what we have to do to get to the 4%, but it's difficult to look at.
Right. I
So-
just want, and I'm not being argumentative. I just don't want it to appear that the town didn't take a cut and the town did not do their best. And actually, we are level funded, if not more than level funded. And everybody chooses to do where they put their money. Like if you decided to cut our raises, well, we'd have to do that. That's contractual. So we'd have to go somewhere else and cut. But I just, we are a team, but I think this is very fair. We're all taking cuts here. We're all taking big cuts here. And I don't think that one side is being favored more than the other.
At the same
Okay, well, let
time-
me make a point here. Two things. Number one, we're coming up on 9 o'clock. And I think we all agreed we don't want to do more than 3-hour sessions.
Hey, Jay.
The other thing is,
Jay?
right now,
Jay, Joe's had his hand up for about 10 minutes.
I'm sorry, Joe.
I gotta give it to him.
Joe,
Well, I wanted to ask Chris Carter. We're doing the appraisals now. Does that apply in this budget year?
Nope.
The new
No.
appraisals?
No, those appraisals will affect the tax rate for the fiscal year 2022. So
2022,
when the tax bills go out in June,
21, 22.
July of 2022,
hmm,
it'll be based on the assessment that was valued as of December 31st, 2020.
All right, because that would kind of be a double whammy on people, I think, if they were getting, because I don't know if anybody
No,
noticed.
they're not done with,
Yeah, okay,
those
no,
values will be assessed.
so we'll still be at the
those
same
values
value
will
we
be
were.
assessed as of end of this year,
Okay,
which will be in the next tax bill.
all right, well, that's kind of a little bit of relief, okay.
all right, so where we're at with this thing now is we see what the tax levy looks like. We see what we need to do to get to or below 4%. We know what we cannot take it from, being the schools. They're already, if we've level funded them, they're level funded. There's no going below that. So we'll just have to figure out what are the ways that we could redo, get below where we need to be. I will talk to both Denise Surratt and Amy Roderick tomorrow and nail down this business of what exactly are we getting from the state in revenue? What exactly, those numbers? Because they're a little bit confusing at the moment.
So on the levy worksheet too, Tom, there's where the abatements are. I know I talked to Dave Robert and we talked about increasing those based on the reval, but then he changed his mind. That we've changed the number back to what it was. And I don't remember what it was. I know we highlighted it.
It was 20,000, I
don't know.
believe.
It was how much?
I think it was 20,000.
But we increased it based on what Dave told me. So that number can be reduced as well.
Yeah, but he backed off of that.
We
So I
have to
think
go
it's,
back-
I
we'll
think
have
it's
to go
back
back to
down to
worksheet.
20,000.
Well, this worksheet has 50 on it. So
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so there's little things we got to do to get this right.
okay.
But the big thing is, what is the maintenance of it really going to be? What is the addition of the 236,519? And what else? Any other confusion here, Brendan?
Yeah, I believe that 236, was it 519, should have 194,000 deducted from it.
That'd be great.
Would.
Because it's a payment we're receiving for last year that I don't think Amy is considering.
Isn't that the 194,000 that they have to apply
Yeah.
for?
Yeah, but Denise, I think, will book it against 2020. She knows it's coming in, so I think she's already taken it under consideration. So if Amy did not, then she's getting the benefit of it not being credited for the right year.
Right, okay, so, yeah, all right. So
Chris,
I'll talk to Denise about that.
Chris, what's the number you want to see for abatements?
20,000.
I believe it was 20, before we adjusted that to 50.
Right, okay.
Okay.
Oh, look at that. $3.99. Oh, sorry, I'm blind. It's $3.94.
$3.94.
Yeah, well, that's still too close.
I know.
At least
But
in
it
my
also has
opinion.
a school-
In my opinion, it's too close.
Okay.
Oh, what do we have in there? The 1.2?
For revenue,
Yeah,
hang on.
No, for general fund withdrawal.
for general fund. Go 1.3 and just see where we get. Like playing dialing for dollars.
I like 1.5, but I'll put 3.
But put the 3 and just see where we get, Tom.
We're driving Tom nuts.
I'm sorry, Tom.
It's all right.
Up 3.67.
Oh, from one, so we must have had 1.2.
We had 1.2, but if you go to 1.3, which is still under the 1.6, we get that cushion that we need.
I could live with that. I don't like it, but live with it.
Chris, none of us like any of it.
Oh, I know. Believe me, I get it. I'm not trying to fight with anybody. Believe me.
No,
I know.
I know. I mean, but the whole thing is you do the whole thing and it all feels bad, right? Like, there's no
My real
happiness
issue
here.
is
Well, I think I think everybody will agree that there's no way in hell we're going to get below 3.
No,
No.
Not without being really stupid.
not
I
unless
disagree.
Just so I'm clear, the only issue I have is that when I came in here in April and we had that nightmare, we had a lot of capital money that we could go to help offset and massage the budget. We
Right?
did a lot of things with people's budgets too, but I don't have capital for next year. So it's all going to come out of somebody's budget. That's why that cushion is important, because none of us know what's going to happen. So
There's nothing left to save.
I think the hardest thing about that year with this cushion is the fact that, I mean, some of this is the pandemic, but some of it is that we put the casino money in, right? Like, so not only are you fighting all the cuts, but the biggest cut came from by using the casino money. So now this is the byproduct of us trying to get out of that.
No, I'm not disagreeing. Hopefully this is a one-time thing and we can get back to normal, but we'll have no cushion other than, and the other issue is next year, that whatever you take out of that general fund, that's a structural deficit for next year. And if we don't have any way to generate revenues and do the same thing that we did this year, where we actually put some monies aside, we're not going to be able to do anything. We're going to be stuck in a quandary next year too. So it's,
Well, we
and I
also
get it. And I
had
know Jerry's got a whole bunch of problems for next year too. So we're all going to be facing some problems.
Okay, I'm going to make one comment here, and my intention is not to raise any hackles or make anybody upset, but those of us who have been doing this for 3 or 4 years are fully aware by now, at least in the school department and in some cases, the municipal side, the fund balance, even though it is taken down to 0, does not stay there for very long. There are a multitude of ways and a multitude of avenues that money comes from that gets put into that. Of course, we have no idea where that's going to be this year, but there are things like CARES money, you name it, COVID-19 money, whatever you want to call it. So We don't know what it's going to be. We don't know where it's going to come from, but we can be pretty sure that it's going to happen. And all we can do is hope and pray that those additional funds help mitigate what's going to happen in the schools, because we all know they are going to have increased expenses, not just a bus contract. Things could go south with their plan overnight, and they could have expenses that we have no clue what they're going to be. So I don't know what you can do with that, but it's just going to be there. And then for next week, Monday, 6 o'clock, the holiday, as I was so eloquently informed after I had scheduled all this, we will be discussing and voting on the revenue estimates, the budget, the school department request, finalize the levy, go over one more time the budget resolutions, and hopefully we'll be done. If not, we can continue on Tuesday night. And part of that will be to authorize me to present everything to the town clerk no later than the 13th of August, which will give us an FTR date of September 26th.
That's
everybody, huh? Everybody comfortable with that plan? I think I've given.
Jay, is the plan on Monday too? We're just gonna vote. Like, we've already discussed everything that
That's what I was trying to do
possibly
tonight,
design,
you know,
and we're just gonna raise hands at that point, right?
Yeah, we've all looked at these numbers. Everybody's pretty much said, okay, let's put them in and we'll just vote on them. Everybody pretty happy with that? And
So the 10th and 11th and that's and possibly the 12th if we need it. That's what you said?
I don't want to go to the 12th. Do you?
No, I just was making sure that that's what you said.
If I even think the 10th and 11th,
Yes, that's what he said.
the 10th and 11th are on the SOS website. If I have to do the 12th, I have to do it by like 10 o'clock tonight. So you think is there anybody here that doubts that we can finish this up in the next 2 days?
I think we beat it like a dead horse. Like, I think we just have to vote at this point.
All right, so we're not going to do the 12th.
Yeah, we're finishing Monday. I'll stay till midnight if it means we can get it done.
I'd rather stay until midnight too and get done by
Want to
on
get
that
it done
one night.
Monday.
Yeah.
We've already set the record for the longest budget committee season ever.
And I
We're
think,
having so much fun. Do we want it to end?
I think the council's meeting Tuesday.
They
they're not.
canceled their meeting on the 11th.
They did.
I just want to make a suggestion that Tom Hamilton be a little more quiet next meeting, but other than that, that's fine.
Tom Hamilton he's just such a disruptive influence.
Well, you don't want to hear what I have to say, believe me.
Okay.
Have a
So
good
that
night.
being said, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Aye.
Okay. And I'll try not to bombard you with any more emails.
Do we want to?
Oh, but will you send, I'm sorry, will you send the thing when you find out from the school whether we have to include that or not?
We'll absolutely send everything I know when I know it,
Perfect.
Forgot
whether it's accurate or not.
we forgot to approve the minutes.
Oh.
No, they weren't scheduled